So as we can see, we have our surface from our drone data, and we have a pattern laid out in front along with our bird and vision here. So as I was saying, A10 is just a little further away, and based off our movement here of half a step or half a foot in this case, I could use my arrow keys to slightly move this forward to clean that out. And maybe I'd do the same thing with A14, but I'd be moving it back instead in order to reduce that. And so once we're actually happy with our pattern now, we'll switch over to our drill hole loading tab. And here it becomes a lot more simplified than our blast pattern layout. We're able to define our reagents. Right now we have some Dyno Nobel products in there, including like our BlastX or Blast Gel, or even some ammonium nitrate. And so we're continuing to populate this list as we develop the software. So if there are libraries of explosives that you would like to see in here, we could definitely bring those in. We also have the option of just creating a new reagent. So we could give it a name, manufacturer, type, and subtype. And once it's created, we could go in and specify the bulk density and the coloring of that product. And so once we're ready with our different reagents to start designing our whole loading template, we'd go over here, define templates. And as you can see, I have a number of them here, and we'll work through a couple of different cases. So we'll just create a new template, and we'll call this webinar single. And what we could do is load in a hole from anywhere in our pattern and use this as a way to design our blast. So on a regular straight shot, maybe we don't have anything that we need to consider with the strata here. We could go immediately into our charging rules, and we'll add two different rules here. We'll add one for stemming and then one for, say, our BlastX. And so you'll notice that the next column, our loading method here, is highlighted in red. And when you float over it, it mentions that one of these have to be variable. And the reason for that is that not every hole is going to have the same length. So variable essentially fills up the rest of the hole for you. So while our stemming might be defined as 2 feet, which we populate at the top either by height or by length, the rest will be BlastX in this case. And so we could see a diagram on the right here that includes our amount of explosives and our amount of stemming based off our bulk densities that we provided earlier. So we could go ahead right now, actually. And before I do that, actually, I'll go to our last tab, which is our initiators and our boosters. And we could specify where we want our initiator and our booster to be. So maybe we want, I don't know, we'll use a DigiShot with I don't know, Geopride, Trojan. And we could specify where we want these. We could say top, middle, bottom. And we could always, when we're using our top and bottom options, we could also offset that from the bottom. If we're going from the middle, we'll just go directly in the middle, and we can insert 1, 2, however many we want. Maybe we'll just leave that at 1. And so now we'll save our template and come back to our screen. So right now, our holes are colored by burden distance. And so if we go to apply templates, select new, and rather than my standard template, we'll go to our webinar single and apply those rules. And we'll see that all our holes have changed coloring to match our hole loading template. Now I also have just a small pad I've created here, and I wanted to highlight a specific feature. So if there's, for example, something that we don't want to blast out, we want to make sure that we give enough cushioning or stemming around this particular layer so that we don't blast it out. We could create a new template, and we'll call this webinar strata. And what we could do is, if we go to a hole that is in that strata and load it, and maybe we would want to add that strata in. So I'm just going to call this partial surface, load that in. We could see where in our hole that is coming into play. And so when we switch to our loading rules, we'll have two different rules we'll have to set up. One from our hole top to that surface we've inserted, and then one from that surface down to our hole bottom. And so we could add in, let's add in 3 for each of these. And so we'll have stemming, sure, we'll just go back with the blast gel, which we'll keep as variable. Maybe have 2 feet of stemming on either side. And then the same thing here, maybe we'll have 2 feet at the bottom, 2 feet at the top, and maybe we'll, just for showing off a different one, we'll choose ammonium nitrate instead of our blast gel. And so again, we could continue with our initiators and boosters. We would probably want different ones here, one for our blast X, and then the other one for our ammonium nitrate. And then whether we put that on the middle or the bottom, we're able to set those off, increase or leave our quantity, and save that. So if I were to go to apply this template now, we'll notice that our holes that didn't cross this particular strata remain the same, whereas the ones that do bisect this plane did change over. And if for whatever reason we wanted to move E13 here, and we're going to move it left, or my other left, I should say, we move that off, it will automatically change back to our standard template, because it doesn't meet that criteria to also be included in this particular setup. So that in a nutshell is what we could do with our drill hole loading. If our surfaces, for example, where our metamorphized top and bottom, that we didn't want to blast out, then I'm sure, I believe all of these actually load in, yeah. Then we could specify this whole area as stemming if we really wanted to. We could just say stemming variable, and then load above it and below it as we would like. So that's our flexibility with drill hole loading. And if we need to change one particular hole, we could do that as well. So if we wanted to go into A17, just through our hole tools on the left, we could go right into edit hole loading, and this would manipulate this charging template only for this hole. So a lot of flexibility there. And we're able, very similar with to the burden report, we're able to create page-by-page detailed PDF report, what the whole loading looks like, to what depth these explosives have to be loaded in, and the quantity. So we'll just give that a second to generate that report so I could show you the report in its entirety. And so we'll just go down desktop, save, and ready to go. Yeah, here it is. So as I mentioned, yep, 2D display on the left, just indicating what we've selected. Again, the bulk densities or the quantities associated with it, and which is all broken down into our table here on the right. And again, this is repeated for every hole. And so then from hole loading, we'll want to go into initiation and timing. And for that, we'll just go into electronic initiator design. There's only a few buttons available on the top. We could define our connectors and then our detonators very similarly to how we did for our drill hole loading. And to really get started with this, we'll just want to select our connector and our detonator. At which point we could select draw initiators, which will change our screen to the following. I'm just going to hide this so we have our full view. Now I have a pen and line option. So right now I'm on my pen and I'll just follow my cursor. Line, just two vertices and a straight line in between. And what we're doing right now is actually selecting our how to connect our holes. So I'm just going to go with my pen and maybe I'll just, depending on how you load your blast, your setup might be different. But I'm just dragging across, and we're using our in-hole detonator 500 with our surface connector of 42 milliseconds. And so we could repeat this for our second row now, and so on and so forth. Maybe I'll do the D row here, just to speed it up. Maybe, do you know what? I'll just do our first four rows. So I've connected our rows together, and now I need to connect our different rows to each other. So I'm going to switch over my connector, switch over my detonator, and I'm just going to actually hit hold space, and this allows me to zoom in and move my camera. And as I release it, it'll bring it back. And maybe, I don't know, I'll go from our A8 to our B8, here our B9 to our C10, and then our C9 to a D9. However you would go about setting up your blast. And really our last thing after this, now that what I'm going to show in terms of connecting our holes are set up, is we need to indicate what our first hole is, so where our blast is going to originate. And so with this, we could either hold down our control or our shift key and select our first hole. So I'm just going to go A2, and we'll see how the numbers populate under each of the holes to indicate their time in the sequence. And then from there, we could bring in our contour line. So we could change our interval for our contour lines. But when we're happy with it, we would just click apply, which would build out our contour lines. And maybe I'll just press that again to show how our blast would go off. And then we could also save this as a PDF. This would just print out plan view overlay. Let's bring that up now. There you go.